so what do you think would be the best way to fix the housing crisis here in Charlotte?
So we're going to need a lot of different things in order to fix it. One of the things has to be more apartments right now. I think we have a shortage of around 3,000 apartments that we need. So we just actually need more physical apartments that are affordable. And so we determine that something is affordable if you spend less than 30% of your income on it. If you're spending more than 30% of what you make on where you live, that's what we call housing burden. So if you're house burdened, and you don't have money to pay a lot of your other bills. So one of the solutions is needing more apartments and more developers who are interested in making apartments that people can afford. I think the other thing we need is some legislation or policy that helps or makes developers have to do it, because on their own, they're going to build apartments that make them the most money. As any business person, they want to, bring in the most money they can. And so without legislation or policy from a state level, they don't have to build any that are affordable. And so we need some policy. So we need actual more apartments. We need policy that makes developers do it. We also need more support from the banks and things like that to help folks be able to get into apartments and housing, right? Homes are also a part of the conversation. The last one is people need to be able to make more money to afford them. So even if they are affordable and you don't make that wage even, then you can't afford to live there. So people need more wages that make sense for them to be able to pay their rent or their mortgage.
So when it comes to the wages that people make, how do you feel about the minimum wage here in Charlotte?
It's too low. So nationally, there's been a fight for 15 in terms of saying that $15 is what a working livable wage is. And so Charlotte and North Carolina statewide have not met that. And so right now, $7.25 is not enough for people who live in the state to be able to pay their bills or do resources and things like that.
What do you feel is the best wage that would fit?
I think the $15 is a fair starting point. I think the best is really hard. If you listen to the comments of people who are against the $15, they feel like they're making $15 to do a job that they need some sort of training for, training that maybe is college or associate's degree or some sort of apprenticeship, and they feel like people who do other jobs that don't need that kind of training, they shouldn't make that much. So there really is a big conversation on who deserves to make that amount of money. But $15 is really a starting part. And so if we put people at $7 and $8 up to $15, then it does mean maybe the others need a bump in pay as well. But I think 15 is a good starting place where you can maybe afford an apartment, you can get your bills and have utilities and just basic needs being met.
So when it comes to the neighborhoods here that are being gentrified, are there any that look like Brook Hill?
So Brook Hill is very unique because it was built in 1951. It's privately owned. It's about 32 acres and it's so spread out. There aren't any that are that spread out and have that much land. Most of the other neighborhoods are really going to have some housing in it. They're going to have some apartments, but Brook Hill Village is an apartment complex that feels like a neighborhood because it's so big. Technically, Brook Hill Village is a part of South End in Charlotte, but it's so big and so spread out that it's almost like it's its own neighborhood. So any of the other neighborhoods that have a large amount of working class apartments in them are part of another neighborhood. And so they've got houses and other resources that are attached to it. Whereas Brook Hill Village, being the way it's spread out, it just happens to look like it's its own neighborhood. But it's really a part of a larger neighborhood of South End and on the south part of Wilmore. So if you're looking for more apartments that are large and have housing, there was Lake Arbor, which was recently closed down because it wasn't meeting codes of the city code. So Lake Arbor was a bunch of apartments that were affordable in the city here in Charlotte, and then they're getting torn down and people had to move because they were not meeting code. So Brook Hill Village, while it's going through a lot of different things, at least the apartments currently meet code, and so the people haven't had to leave right now. They'll only have to leave if someone decides to buy the property that the apartments are on.
Okay, so when it comes to housing that isn't coming up to code, why do you feel that tenants aren't doing anything about it? Why aren't they fixing the housing so that people can be able to live there?
Yeah, so the question is, why aren't tenants doing anything? And so tenants who are living in apartments that don't cost a lot sometimes have a lot of fear about if the person who owns the apartment building or the property manager is going to fix it. In our country, unless you have a lot of power and a lot of times a lot of wealth, people don't listen to you. And so if I have to live in this apartment, I might be afraid of asking for too much because I'm afraid that I'll be put out and then I won't have anywhere to live. But the people are surprisingly really brave in these apartments because I've seen them at city council. They are asking, they're making the city council go out and check the apartments, they're making the property managers be held to account. So there are lots of agencies like Action NC. The county has different departments. The city level, they've got the housing and neighborhood services. And the tenants really have been the ones, the people who live in the apartments have been the ones that brought in all of these agencies and organizations to make their voice be heard. So they are doing a lot to try to get attention on it, but the tenants, the people who live in the apartments, aren't the ones that fix it. The property managers, the building owners, the property owners are the ones who can make maintenance things happen. They can change the way the apartments look. They can also control the rents on the apartments. Those are the folks who have the power. The tenants can have some power in the same way that other citizens in the country or residents can, ask their government for help or bring the news, right? Media is a big part of it. And so a lot of places like Lake Arbor and other parts of the city have gotten news cameras to come in and sort of record what the conditions are like, the fact that they're not being cold or the fact that their rents are going up in a way that their wages are not. The news plays a big part in sharing that story and giving the tenants some power and some voice where they typically wouldn't have that.
Do you know of any ways now that are being effective in cutting down on people who are being pushed out of neighborhoods or neighborhoods that are being invested in so that they can be better for people who are living there?
Absolutely. I think a great story that's happening right now is in the west end of Charlotte. And so near Johnson C. Smith University off of Betty's Ford Road, that's sort of what we call the historic West End or the West End corridor. And recently the Knight Foundation, which is a national organization, has supported over 10 different projects, putting in $700,000 to fix infrastructure, to add new retail, to give new apartments to that area. So they are trying to overhaul and give a facelift to that entire neighborhood, which is one of Charlotte's, it's a large African American population. It's also a large working class neighborhood. A lot of jobs and apartments are what we consider low income. And so all of these different projects, as well as there was work being done before that to help folks there to have a better neighborhood, a better environment, and to improve the resources and infrastructure of the neighborhood.
Do you feel that there are ineffective ways that are happening right now that are just
ineffective? I don't know. I feel like Charlotte in the last 2 years or so has been doing a lot. So there's so many government agencies, even the banks. We've got banks surrounding us all where we're sitting right here. I feel like everyone's trying to pitch in and fix it. I think it's ineffective only if we're just talking and we're not doing actionable things. I think Charlotte has really been trying to do a lot around the action of it. Here at the museum, we've got an exhibit that highlights what's happening around affordable housing and its connections to redlining and gentrification. So people get to come in and see the exhibit, but then also learn about community advocacy, learn about what's happening at city council or at the county commission. And so if it's just talking and it doesn't have action, I would say that's ineffective. But a lot of what I've been seeing in terms of policies, we've got places like the Charlotte Housing Partnership. They give classes, they give other kinds of resources, they help you with your down payment for homes. And so all of these different organizations and city agencies, I think, have been really trying to be effective. And so I haven't seen too much that's not good. It's, if it's just talking or it's just making an announcement, that's not really doing something. But if you're actually trying to put a policy in place, then that's really important.
So when it comes to how the future will look, do you feel like locals and other people will be able to speak up more so that the future can look better for housing and the city in general?
Absolutely. I think there have been decades where people were really silent, but I think right now people are just so fed up and they've seen what has happened with cycles of displacement over time that things are not happening as quietly as they did before. Besides Brookhill Village, we've got the former community of Brooklyn. The residents of that area of what was formerly Brooklyn are vocally attending city council meetings and other meetings to make sure that new developments coming to that area are honoring the past and are having space for apartments that are affordable. And so they've got t-shirts, they're attending meetings en masse, they're making sure that the developer knows that we're here and you can't ignore us. That's just one neighborhood. I mentioned the West End. Brook Hill Village is also banding together to make sure that they have more affordable housing in South End that continues to exist for people who do all of these amazing jobs that we need. They drive our buses, they clean all of these shiny office buildings. Many of them work in the hospital system, they work for schools, they work all over CMS. Those people deserve to have apartments that are beautiful, apartments that are nice, that are safe. And so people in many of these communities around the city are definitely speaking up. I think they'll continue to do so. I think the decades of folks being silent and letting things happen in their neighborhood, I think that's kind of gone. A lot of the protest movement that we've seen with social justice things are really connecting to a lot of these economic issues, and I think people will continue along with that. Yeah, for sure.
Now, you had said the Panther Stadium used to be a hospital. Do you feel that it's important that when buildings are being torn down, that there should be something that lets the locals know that something historically used to be here?
Absolutely, locals and visitors. I went to Denver a few years ago, and there's a part of Denver that was similar to Charlotte in that it was a historically Black neighborhood. And so there are lots of different new things there. There are bars and other things, but outside of all of them are these plaques that let folks know that there was something here historically. And so I think you've got to have plaques. They also have an audio walking tour that you can take yourself through. I think that historic organizations and even community groups need to make sure that when these new developments come up, there are plaques and there are ways that celebrate and honor the past by letting folks know what was there. I think that's really important.
And do you feel like changes will be made to like further develop the city and develop housing?
Yes. So in the last year, since the Gannett Center has had a Welcome to Brook Hill, the city, banks, and other agencies have said that they will pledge over $270 million to fixing it. I think making all those announcements made people pay attention, and we're really looking at those places to do something about it. So I think with all that money, with the fact that people are being vocal like we talked about, that there will be some changes made. I think that it won't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight that we had this lack of affordable housing, and so we can't fix it overnight. But I do think that we're at a great place, and if we keep with it, if that money stays there and we get some more, and folks stay on them, right? Like if you don't put pressure on organizations and corporations, they won't do some of the things. You have to keep letting them know, hey, I remember that you said you were going to donate that money or you're going to build this program. We've got to keep the pressure on them, otherwise it won't happen. But I think it's possible. I think it could happen.
It's possible too.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering the questions.
You're welcome. Yay, project.